Welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene, where in this unusual time, we gather online each week to offer our care, our compassion, and support for one another. I'm Katie Seifert, your coordinator of faith formation and spiritual development. And with me this morning is Jennifer Hackett, our ministerial intern, Sharon Roberts, our worship associate, and Suzanne Giordano on piano. And behind the screen is Kat Jordan doing all of our tech for us this morning. Thank you. We return each week insisting upon the resilience of this community, this congregation, this gathering of friends and companions along the journey. With all that we are facing, the fires sweeping through our beloved places, the global pandemic, the national reckoning with racism and white supremacist ideology, it is safe to say we need one another more than ever. In this, our ritual of gathering, we affirm our interconnection, our interdependence. We surrender our control and allow this hour to be what it will. Dropping into the familiar, we allow ourselves to set down just for this hour. The responsibilities that call to us, the alerts and alarms that beckon us, the projects that follow us room to room. In this ritual of gathering, we place first and foremost at the center of our heart's attention this sacred place, this sacred time. I do have a few church-related announcements for you. Please remember to donate any books and jigsaw puzzles for the UUCE book sale. Today, from 1 to 3, is the last day that the book sale team will be at the church accepting those donations. Please check the newsletter or our UUCE website for the book categories that they are accepting. 1 to 3, last chance today. Also, our Soul Matters discussion for the month of October is coming up. We'll be exploring the theme of deep listening. This is a preparatory conversation, and it's going to happen on September 15th from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Revlo and I had a wonderful time connecting with those of you who came last month to explore September's theme of renewal. And so we hope to take another deep dive with you as we consider what it means to be a people of deep listening. Also, Diane Butera's yoga class will begin September 22nd. That class will be happening every Tuesday and Thursday. You can look for information about how to register and the specific times, and that information will be in the upcoming e-bulletin. Lastly, registration for small group ministries is available now through September 27th. If you have questions or would like to know more about small group ministry, visit UUCE website or take advantage of one of the Zoom drop-in conversations and question and answer sessions, which are going to be held each Sunday in September from 11:15 to noon. Check the weekly connections, that e-bulletin for registration instructions, and the link to that Q&A. So, knowing that there are ways to connect, both on Sunday mornings and throughout the week, let us now be buoyed by this hour, that we might have nourishment for the week ahead, whatever that week might bring. Welcome. It is so good to be together.
Our chalice lighting reading today is by the Reverend Scott Taylor. A new day awaits. We who long for return, who long for repair, gather again to mend the tender strands of connection between each other, the world, and those parts of ourselves buried deep. We begin once more the work of welcome, of forgiveness, of renewing this weary, worn world. Come, friends, a new day, a new story awaits.
So I'd like us to take a moment to center ourselves, to settle more deeply into our seats. Allow your feet to plant firmly on the ground beneath you and feel the pressure of the planet pushing gently back up against you. Allow your limbs, your shoulders, your back, your neck, just allow them all to relax. Soften your gaze and enter into this, our breathing meditation.
Come, Yet Again Come by Anne Slater. The Persian poet Rumi challenges us. Come, come, whoever you are. Wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. And we come from rich heritages of liturgy and pomp. We come from burning legacies of angry gods and threats of hellfire. We come just as we are. We come exuberant and joyful hearts, eager to witness to others. We come bereft of the goodness of life, wondering, hesitant. We come just as we are. We come in the bloom of youth, ready to explore new truths. We come ready to sit apart from our children and be nourished for an hour. We come with gray in our hair and experiences to share. We come just as we are. We come to the place we never knew before was home. We come to the place that has been home for most of our lives. We come just as we are to join our brothers and sisters as members of one family in this beloved home, our hands and hearts outstretched. Come, yet again, come.
So I wanted to talk to you this morning about rituals. And the best way that I thought we could talk about rituals was to take an example from someone else's family and see if maybe there are some ways that you can see your own rituals inside the rituals that I described for you. Sound good? Good. So in Sylvester's family, there's a morning wake-up ritual, which is that Momo comes down the hallway and knocks on the door and opens the door slowly and says, "Sylvester, it's time to wake up." And usually they pull the blankets over their head and say, "I'm not ready to wake up." But Momo comes in and gives Sylvester a kiss on their forehead, and then the day has begun. So here's the next part of the morning ritual. When Sylvester comes downstairs, Mom is usually getting breakfast together. Bowls and almond milk and silverware. And Momo is making tea for everybody, and everyone sits around the table and passes things back and forth to each other and chats about the day to come. What are the things that we're looking forward to? What are the things that we're feeling a little anxious about? What are the things that we need to accomplish? How are the ways that we can help each other? So that's Momo and Mom's and Sylvester's breakfast ritual. And then the day really is begun, and so everyone needs to go to school and work. Now, it used to be that Mom drove Sylvester to school and dropped them off. But just because everyone in the world right now is having to deal with changes, Sylvester's family is no different. Now they do school, and they do work, and they do job search from home. And so Mom takes one room and Momo takes another, and Sylvester takes their iPad back and forth between, and that's how the day goes. It's a sort of an entry ritual into school and work and the work ahead. But at the end of the day, the nighttime ritual stayed exactly the same. So first there's the brushing of the teeth. And then there's the putting on of the pajamas. And then there's the kissing on the forehead. And then usually Sylvester reads one book by themselves. And then either Momo or Mom comes in and reads a second book before the night-night light goes out. And that's how Sylvester knows it's time to close their eyes. So those are rituals in Sylvester's house. And some of those rituals may be similar to rituals that you have in your home. And some of those rituals may sound really different from the ways that things happen in your home. Rituals are designed to kind of move us from one moment to another, and they can be these very everyday things. And they can also be prayer and music and mark big events. They don't always have to be one way or the other. So this is how I like us to begin to think about ritual. And I'm wondering, what are some of the rituals in your life? Start to think about that question. All right, it's wonderful to be with you this morning. Have a great time in Spirit Jam. Bye.
These are the words of Casper ter Kuile. In everyday language, we think of sacred as an adjective, as a synonym for holy or blessed. It describes something static, maybe a little dusty, outside our day-to-day experience. But it is much better understood as a verb, something that we do. The word sacred itself comes from the Latin sacrare, which means to consecrate or dedicate. And to consecrate means to declare or make something holy. So the sacredness is in the doing, and that means we have enormous agency to make sacred happen ourselves.
Blessings on the four-legged creatures, and blessings on the blossom, blessings on the fruit, blessings on leaf and stem, blessings on the root, blessings on the meal and peace upon the earth. Let us begin.
So I wanted us to begin by proclaiming that we human beings, we are profoundly and at our core meaning makers. As our story illustrated for us today, rituals can happen pretty much anytime, anywhere, for any purpose. I wish I could call on a show of hands, but barring that, I just want you to consider for yourselves, do you have a bedtime ritual in your life right now? Perhaps like Sylvester, you had one as a child. Maybe you have a Sunday morning ritual or a weekly watering of the houseplants ritual. To everyone this morning, I invite you to conjure for yourself some examples of something that you do that is that kind of set aside time, that renewal time, time that you make by doing sacred. I invite you to be thinking of the moments of your life as holding potential to be ritual too. We'll talk more about what ritual is and what it can be for each of us in our lives. I've been thinking a lot about this recently because ritual, I think, can provide lifelines for us, holding us steady while the rest of the world seemingly falls to pieces. For example, each morning, a journaling practice might allow us to name what's on our hearts and our minds, getting them out of our brains and onto paper. Pulling cards from decks of cards like the Mastery of Love series or tarot cards or angel cards can help us to focus our intentions for the day, for the week ahead. Building small altars can honor what we love or what we hope to conjure in the world. Jasper and feather, sand dollar and ash. I'm struck by the layers of meaning that we can find within each component, each altar piece, something found or gifted, picked up and made sacred through the act of our noticing it, our cherishing of it. Each thing also connected to elements of our planet. Jasper for earth, for example. Feather found on a walk for air. Sand dollar, a gift from a mentor of mine representing water, and ash, this very real reminder of the power of fire. The altar that I'm describing, it's been built over time. It's changed over time. At one point, it held a photo of my son. At another time, a piece of jewelry that I found especially beautiful. This living ritual space that evolves as my needs and interests change. It has become, for me, a touchstone, a way to engage and ground myself before engaging with the day. In a recent class with Marcia McPhee, who is a worship and ritual builder by profession, she took us through a brief history of ritual, calling upon moments specifically in Judeo-Christian history to illustrate this idea of ritual as living and human and necessary for us. The first step in this history tour was Exodus, wherein the Israelites escaping from Egypt, they finally make it across the Red Sea, only to wander the desert for the next 40 years. But in this moment, they've crossed the Red Sea, and the first thing that they do when they get safely to the other side is to begin to sing and dance. They're led by Miriam, a prophetess, Moses' sister. And she pulls out what's called a tamborin. That's the word for grain sieve, but it's turned into our idea of what is a tambourine. She pulls out her grain sieve, her tamborin, to make a joyful noise and to lead the people in a celebration. The circle dance. It's one example of what ritual can be: joyful and celebratory, inclusive, spontaneous. Perhaps those 5 rhythm dancers from this morning's gathering music video intrigued you, or perhaps it felt a little strange or uncomfortable. 5 Rhythm's approach to ritual dance derives from this assumption that our bodies hold sacred rhythm, rhythms made sacred by our doing, by our dancing, by our expression of those rhythms. Miriam's tamborin drum could echo that idea for us. Now, then Marcia McPhee took us forward in history. We saw those same people, those same Israelites, generations later, enacting ritual in a very different way, highly stylized. Now they have a temple, and as McPhee exclaimed to us in class, closets to hold stuff. Rich cloths and robes and a sacred ark. gold and incense, all held by priestly hands, imbued with sacred meaning by the people gathered. Those who can access the ritual in this time are limited: the kings, the priests, the wealthy and learned. Perhaps this version of ritual is what you think of when you think of that word, intentionally separated from normal life, stuffy maybe. These are two extremes of ritual practice, one earthy and celebratory and personal, the other stylized, formalized, but still important. Between these two examples, there are myriad others that can represent the ways in which people connect to something outside ourselves, expressing gratitude or sorrow, anxiety, prayer, hope, lament, kinship. I wonder about what this means for us as UUs, how we can make meaning of modern day ritual. How can we, for example, listen closely to the planet and speak back to her? How can we create rituals of meaning that are built for this moment, this time, this cultural context? How can we build rituals of protest, rituals of solidarity, of self-love? How does ritual strike that balance in our lives, and how can we nurture practices that in turn nurture us, our community, our wider world? In my imagined version of this dream, I see our UU community being not appropriative, but deeply earnest in our quest to bring about new rituals. Not at all fanatical about our particulars, but instead invested in a richly creative and evolving expression. Ritual is living act. Ritual is, in fact, created by people, after all, and shaped by people's needs and wants and desires, by their environments, their socio-political and cultural contexts, influenced and performed through the mediums that we have access to. How many closets we have, for example. Ritual, just like my altar space at home, changes over time. It's meant to. It's made for and by people, performed for and by people, evoked for and by us. Sarah E. Koss and Mark Holder defined spirituality like this, quote, a feeling of connectedness to something greater than oneself, experienced through cultivating a relationship with oneself, one's community, one's environment, and one's perception of the transcendent. So borrowing from that definition of spirituality, Casper ter Kuile, who our readings came from this morning, organized his book, The Power of Ritual, right here. Organized his book based around that idea or conception of spirituality, stating that ritual serves our spiritual life by providing connection with self, connection with others, with the natural world, and with the transcendent. So that's one way to think about how we might organize ritual in our lives. There are other possibilities, though. Another way to think about this might be through shaping ritual based on time, like how often we do them. This idea comes from Dallas Church's Faith Forward Spiritual Practices program, where we think about rituals of daily life, like those described in our story this morning with Sylvester's family. Weekly practice, like the ritual that we're engaging in right now by gathering together for worship. A ritual of monthly giving back out to the community, perhaps by going to Food for Lane County or any number of other ways that we might engage in a monthly way. Yearly celebrations that bring us together, once in a lifetime events. I believe that a foundation of connection with self or with daily practice creates the necessary solid bedrock out of which all of our possible community practices can meaningfully arise. And so because our personal rituals create that foundation, I think it's vitally important that we cultivate them. That might look like a meditation practice for you, sitting on a cushion and allowing ourselves to go quiet. It might look like a morning walk through the neighborhood. It might look like a daily dream journal or your morning cup of coffee poured into your favorite mug. Each of these examples can be imbued with intention, thus transforming them from daily tasks like I must get my morning exercise to a ritual of care and connection, an opportunity to get right with your soul. Turkile tells us that it is through our intention setting that these simple, everyday, seemingly secular tasks can be made sacred to us and take on better and bigger, deeper meaning. So if we think about those daily practices as our foundation, we can move on to our weekly connection. And as Turkile describes it, the connection with others. For those of us who attend church here at UUCE regularly, perhaps this is where you have traditionally found your connection to others. I know that's the case for me. And in this time of COVID, it feels very odd and disconnected. I invite us to use our meaning making and our creative imaginative minds to fully envision one another right now, sitting in our separate homes, maybe looking out the window at smoke, or looking directly at the screen, or listening from the other room as this service is held. I invite you to allow your intention of connection to reach out across those invisible ley lines, that web that holds us with a tensile strength that can be hard to see unless we allow ourselves the ritual intention of dropping into this moment, affirming the sacred quality of this community, even as we're separated. We're social creatures after all, and this time with fires and pandemic, their isolation in layers that are hard to fathom. And so I want this to be a call, a powerful reminder of just how much we need that connection with one another, and an encouragement to find it in the safest ways available to us. That weekly connection might be in hosting a dinner party via Zoom, where each person or family creates a dish based on a theme. Foods could be portioned out and dropped off to be shared, or each family or household could just eat at their separate tables. Agree to join via Zoom at a certain time and say the same blessing over their meals before breaking bread together. Blessed are the blossoms and the fruit. Blessed are the leaves and the stems. Blessed are the roots. Blessings on our planet and on one another. Prayers for peace upon the earth. This connection to the natural world is another piece that I really want us to lift up in a ritual way. I would say that we are being shown in myriad ways just how connected, how not separate we are from the natural world. Pandemic and fires, deep desire for rain right now, grief over animals and plants and trees and insects that are being lost. On Thursday evening, we came together for a service of solace. And during that ritual moment, we spoke our prayers and our fears out loud as we poured ritually healing waters into a bowl, that those healing waters might be poured onto the earth, helping to quench her thirst. And people across all cultures have created rituals of connection, called to the gods of the sky, the wind, the water, weather rituals of voice and dance, invoking and calling upon rain. What if we suspended our modern American disbelief in those threads of connection and instead allowed that the planet is in fact responding to our pleas, that she is in conversation with us, responsive to us, aware of us, and she's been raising her voice ever higher so that we might listen to her and act on her behalf collectively in communion with one another. Spiritual rituals of supplication and grief, lament, they make up our inheritance too. They're available to us here and now. Next week, we're going to be celebrating Ingathering. It's a ritual time to acknowledge the coming together of our community. We do it every year. It's the official start to the church year. In this week ahead, I want to invite you to engage with the waters of your lives, Find water sources, run water over your hands, splash your face with the intention of ritual cleansing. Look for dewdrops and notice closely their beauty. Stomp in whatever puddles you may find. And if it feels too foreign, just set a timer for yourself, 15 minutes to go out, find water around your home and engage with it in a ritual way or inside your home. Next week, we're going to ask that you bring a bit of water with you to service, that we might bless this community and the gifts that this community brings. Again, from Marcia McPhee, she says that in times of extraordinary suffering, isolation, and loss, it is imperative that we pay attention to ritual and allow it to help us through. She invites us, in fact, to take extraordinary measures to figure out how to do ritual in our lives, that it might help us shape and make meaning out of these extraordinary times. However you choose to work with ritual in your own life, and wherever you find yourself drawn to create rituals that affirm your connection to the cyclical nature of things, I hope that thinking about ritual in these myriad ways helps you to see the places where it already exists for you and where you might deepen your own practice to better serve your life. Thank you.
We all have moments in our lives that we want to share with our community, our ups and downs that make up our lives and loves. Please join us in the chat with your joys and your sorrows at this time. For the happy puppies and the air filters, the safety of loved ones, for the extra time for new hobbies, for beauty in what is left, we are thankful. For health issues, isolation, the wildfires, and all that it has brought, we hold you. For all of the joys and sorrows that have been named by the beloveds today, and for those that you hold in your hearts, we pray with you, we breathe with you, and we pour out our water to quench the fires of our lives.
These are the words of the Reverend Scott Taylor. Trust that the seeds of hope are taking root, even when the ground is cracked and dry. Believe grace is hiding just behind that bend. Know there is always a way forward, even if it's not the one you wished it would be. The lights never stay off, friends. The world is much too wild for that. Life never wants to leave us behind, for there is something unruly and loving at the heart of it that is always sneaking in from the side, waiting and wanting for us to take its hand and dance. So be on the lookout, beloveds, as we go on our way. Blessed be, and amen.